In 2020, news broke that a YouTuber who had moved all the way from California to get an education and a life was found deceased in the trunk of her car in Houston, Texas. Before we begin, my name is Annie and I post solved, unsolved, and missing persons cases here on my channel. So if true crime is the kind of thing, you're welcome as we look into the case of Brianna JR Johnson. On the morning of Saturday, 28th of November 2020, a couple simply known as Olga and Kimberly were on their way home from Huntsville. They had driven 3 hours from their home in LaBelle to Huntsville on Friday the 27th to purchase a four-wheeler. However, the seller didn't show up for whatever reason, so since they couldn't go back having spent the entire day waiting for this seller, they decided to spend the night instead and go back to LaBelle in the morning. So that morning, they were driving back and Kimberly was using her phone for navigation, and somehow it routed them a way they typically wouldn't have used, but they used it anyways. While driving on this route that wet morning, they encountered a reckless driver. Whoever this person was, he was driving erratically. Kimberly was scared to bits. This driver was high, looking crazy, with a glazed expression. He almost slammed into the truck. And it wasn't just them he was scaring off the road, he was doing the same thing to other road users as well, just scaring everybody driving close to him. Kimberly decided she would live stream the incident on her Facebook page, so she began to stream live. This person who was driving was smoking something while he drove recklessly down the I-10 freeway. Scared, Kimberly called 911 to tell them about this individual who was driving without a care for his life and the life of other individuals using the freeway. Then she and her partner then turned off the road to let him drive wherever he was rushing to in that manner. And then later they got back on the road and continued with the trip. It was later on while watching the news that they would learn the end to the story that they have been a part of. It was around 8 a.m. Saturday, November 28, 2020, when Texas Department of Public Safety troopers received radio communication about a reckless driver. Kimberly had made a call and other road users also called to report that someone was driving erratically. So now on alert, a DPS trooper observed a white Honda passenger vehicle traveling east at a very high rate of speed. The trooper activated the marked patrol vehicle's emergency light to conduct a traffic stop near FM 365 on the I-10 highway in Chambers County. The driver pulled to the right as if he was stopping for the troopers, but then when they approached, he immediately sped up without stopping. This driver, whosoever he was just speeding. He just continued speeding eastbound on the I-10 freeway. He just practically led the troopers on a chase at this point. When he drove into a concrete barrier, damaging one of his tires and lost control of the vehicle for a bit, it seemed that would have prompted him to stop, but he didn't stop. He managed to steer the vehicle back on the track and continued driving on 3 wheels with his bad tires until the chase came to an end when he came crashing near a church resale shop parking lot in Beaumont. Investigators pounced on the vehicle and began to process it for evidence, which, by the way, is standard procedure following a motor vehicle crash. They were taking inventory of the white Honda vehicle when troopers found in the trunk of the Honda a deceased female. She would later be identified as 28-year-old Brianna JR Johnson of Houston, Texas, while the driver had also been identified as 35-year-old Victor Campbell JR of Fresno, Texas. After the crash, police then rushed Campbell to a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. He was then later released and taken to Jefferson Jail. Upon his release from the hospital following his arrest, Houston Police Department detectives stated that they had found items on the scene, that's the car and where it crashed, that would link the body and Campbell back to an address. With this information, the police made their way to a duplex at the 4100 block of Maggie Street in Houston's Sunnyside neighborhood, where neighbors say that Brianna lived there and Campbell would come visit on occasions as they saw him from time to time coming and going from the residence. On Sunday, the 29th of November, investigators got a warrant and they were able to search the home. Before we proceed, let's talk about Brianna a bit. Who was this lovely young lady that had come to her end at such a prime time in her life in such a horrible way in the trunk of a car? Brianna was originally from California but moved to Houston, Texas. She was born on November the 6th, 1992. She was the second oldest child of her mother and the first child of her father. People who knew her described her as a very sweet, quiet person who cared deeply about others. She was a well-educated young black woman with a lot of confidence. She was beautiful and ambitious. Brianna went to Woods Crest Elementary School in 2002, then Dolores Street Elementary School in 2003, then Carson High School, all in California. And she was a graduate of Texas Southern University, where she had studied administration of justice. She had a YouTube channel where she shared her passion for makeup, and she also did vlogs about her life. In her last vlog that was posted 2 months before this incident, she showed her subscribers gifts she received from her boyfriend. Apparently, this boyfriend of hers is the same Victor Campbell JR who was now in police custody. I watched a couple of her videos and I couldn't help but notice how happy she was. She had everything going on for her. She attended events with friends and family, and it seemed she was well loved and had a very good support system too. She had a sense of humor. She had a very confident outlook to life. She was a very confident young woman with good head on her shoulders. I came across this post she had made on her Instagram. She had been attending a Nigerian wedding and she was part of the Ashrebi ladies. So she was putting on this traditional Nigerian Ankara fabric, and she said she wanted to now be called Oluwa Brianna. From that post alone, I feel she loved to have fun and she was truly accommodating. She was showing up for her girl who was getting married, and she was happy and looking good doing it. On her socials, you will see her planning her life, creating her office space, going shopping, buying furniture, basically just living life to the fullest. She even had plans on moving to Atlanta sometime in her future. But amidst all these fun videos, you also see the one Campbell featured in. I must say, the first time seeing him, something was off for a lot of people. Campbell didn't seem like a good match for lovely Brianna, not because of what we now know he had done to her, but his demeanor was kind of like off. Something about him was disturbing. It was almost like he was not that into her, but was only putting up with her for what he could get from her. Well, Brianna was in a relationship with Campbell, whom, just like Brianna, was originally from California. He was born in Richmond and raised in Fairfield, but later moved to Fresno, Texas. I can't say exactly how long it was they have been seeing each other. They must have been dating for quite a bit because the relationship didn't seem to be a new one. Allegedly, Campbell had gotten out of jail about 3 months prior to them dating. Now, after Brianna's body had been found in the trunk of her car, the police decided to search the home, as I said before, and at her home, police discovered a surveillance camera. Wait, did I even mention that the car in which she had been found was hers? Well, if I didn't, please take note of that. The vehicle belonged to Brianna, the same one we see her drive on her YouTube channel. The cameras captured what appeared to be the last signs of Brianna alive when she arrived home in her Honda at about 27 minutes past 5 p.m. that evening. Then another woman had arrived at the apartment about, 5.5 hours later. This woman, she then left just 15 minutes later. She didn't stay long at the residence. According to investigators, this woman told them that she saw Campbell at the unit when she came in, but did not see Brianna. This woman, I believe, was Brianna's housemate. She also told authorities that she smelled a strong odor of cleaning products when Campbell came out of the bedroom. Surveillance video had also picked up Campbell. So while watching the camera, according to reports, Campbell was seen wearing a robe at about midnight, and allegedly he covered the surveillance camera on the side of the duplex with a sheet, but he didn't cover the other side of the duplex. I don't think it's even alleged at this point. He really did cover the cameras with sheets. and the camera had caught him doing it. I'm not sure why he didn't cover the other side because the cameras on that side was also recording steadily. Could it be because Brianna had a housemate and the other wing of the duplex belonged to this housemate? Maybe. So the surveillance video then showed Campbell backing Brianna's car up to her door, and then he lined the trunk of the car with a blanket and kept moving back and forth from the home to the car. At a point, he was bent over as if he was moving something heavy, and that was the time it was believed he loaded Brianna's body in the trunk in the early hours of Saturday morning around 4:50 to 5 a.m. thereabout. After that, he gets into the white Honda and speeds away from the area. 3 hours later, the couple we had initially talked about, Kimberly and her partner, who called the police due to his erratic driving. Investigators say that multiple traces of human blood was found when the apartment was searched, so it was obvious something really bad did happen to Brianna in her own apartment. When Campbell was questioned, he claimed he didn't remember anything from the previous day. At this point, he was even claiming that he had no recollection of him hurting Brianna, loading her body into the trunk of a car, or even the high-speed chase. Really? How convenient. But noticeably, on his body, he had bruises. He had multiple injuries to his face and arms that were consistent to human scratch mark. So yes, he had hurt this girl, and Brianna had actually fought for her life. She didn't just lay down there taking it. When Brianna's body was found in that truck, she was wrapped in white sheets, had a swelling on her head, and had vital body fluids coming out of her ear. She also had broken nails that were consistent with signs of struggling. So whatever tale Campbell was spinning about not knowing or remembering what had happened, no one was buying it. Meanwhile, an autopsy was done, and the report of Brianna's autopsy showed that her COD was due to strangulation. Campbell, at this point, was now faced with several charges, including murder, driving while intoxicated, tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse, as well as felony evading of arrest. In fact, when police dug into his background, they found out he had served previous charges for family violence. At first, he was being held at the Jefferson County Jail without bond. Then the bond was set at $1 million. A friend of Brianna's would speak with reporters, and she said, quote, "This was a very sad and unfortunate case. A lot of our friends are still shocked and don't understand how this could happen to her and why this happened to her. They said it was her, and it was really her. It was just like a total heartbreak and shock. I just can't wrap my head around it right now. It just doesn't seem this type of incident would happen to her. So to be found in the trunk of a car, it was just so heartbreaking. You all look good, but you will never know what's going on in someone's household. And I just don't know what was the cause behind this tragic incident." End quote. A GoFundMe account was also created by her aunt to help with her funeral. In the message, she says, "Hello, my name is Brianna Johnson, and I am the aunt of Brianna Johnson. On Saturday, November the 28th, the unimaginable happened to my family. Brianna Johnson, at the young age of 28, was senselessly murdered. As of now, we don't have many answers or much information, but we do know we have to prepare to bring my niece home and lay her to rest. Unfortunately, we do not have life insurance and in need of some help. She was the sweetest person in the world, and if you knew her, I know she left a mark in your life. She didn't deserve this and will never understand this. Anything helps, and all funds raised will go towards her burial expenses and bringing her back home to California. Keep my family in your prayers, especially my sister and I." I feel sad for Brianna's family. She had just shared a post on her Facebook page about a week before her demise, indicating a date night with a heart emoji. Based on her social media post, the two spent time in Galveston during the week of Campbell's birthday, prompting lingering questions from her friends. How could he have done this to her following a birthday she celebrated for him? And what was the motive? Well, an individual who knows Campbell well but prefers to remain anonymous will give information that makes us understand a little more about this entire situation. So, according to this person, Victor Campbell was raised in an extremely strict family where women didn't really have a say or rights. His grandfather was a pastor, and that created a religious and strict atmosphere he grew up in. His childhood was allegedly marred with domestic violence, as he watched his father beat his mother on several occasions. So, even though this was a church family, the men in the family were violent, including the pastor. Outsiders didn't really know what was going on within the household, but a couple of boys in the family would eventually turn out the same as the grown men. Campbell's father had passed and Campbell had found him. It's not said what had exactly happened, and the picture of the entire circumstances surrounding Campbell finding his deceased father is not exactly clear. But apparently, he was so messed up after finding his father, and he had to be institutionalized because he had started drinking to cope with the pain. In 2003, Campbell had gone to an auction to buy a car with a friend, and after they purchased the vehicle, Campbell, who had been drinking, began to drive back under the influence with this friend of his in the passenger seat, and they got into a car crash, flipping the ADA Delta he just purchased over 4 times. This got him arrested and charged. And that was when his mother moved to Texas so he could get away from the memory in California and get a fresh start. But that obviously didn't work, as he would be followed by his demons. This anonymous person also said they had visited Campbell and Brianna not so long before the tragic situation, and they thought Brianna was a good girl that had now finally grounded Campbell and gave him the stability he so much needed. According to this person, they had explained a little bit about Campbell's background to Brianna, telling her how he could become something totally different whenever he drank and got intoxicated because he never got past the situation with his father. So Brianna was aware of the demons Campbell was fighting. While visiting, Campbell will have one of his episodes, and there was an altercation between him and Brianna. The account of what this person gave was that they had all gone to the store and bought drinks. Campbell had gotten drunk and attacked Brianna, and Brianna had to defend herself, and this degenerated into a full fight. If Brianna's friends and family were aware of this particular fight, I am not sure because it was said to have happened in August of 2020, and 3 months later, Brianna was gone. So allegedly, Brianna understood the type of man she was dealing with. She knew Campbell had a problem. She knew Campbell was a piece of work. And this person, after this incident, had advised her to cut Campbell out of her life. But because Brianna felt he only goes gaga whenever he drinks, she said she would just have to help him stop drinking so he doesn't get to that point. So after the fight, they stopped talking for a bit, but reconciled pretty quickly and continued like they never missed a beat. Another incident that was said to have happened was a time when Brianna went out of town on a girls' trip, but when she had returned, Campbell had found text messages of her talking to someone else, and Brianna had also found some sketchy stuff on his phone, and they had a fight about it. It seemed like Brianna, who was a strong woman, would not back down for Campbell and would stand up to him, antagonizing him, and this in turn would trigger him the more. Then after their fight, she would take him back because she felt he needed her. This entire situation was toxic, and Brianna had no business being in a relationship with this damaged man. Campbell had a history of domestic violence. He was arrested and charged for beating up his ex-code Leah in October of 2006 and strangling her until she passed out. He did jail time for this later on and was released on probation. Another ex called Natasha, in her protective order request, will also say he had abused her, choked her, and beat her throughout their relationship, which ended in 2009. She'll be granted a protective order for a long time. Then he chokes and beats yet another ex called Angela in 2014, and she had to get a protective order against him in the same April of that 2014. If you listen carefully, you will pick up on his pattern of abuse and his MO of choking women, which he did to Brianna. Aside this, he had a lengthy history of incarceration. For instance, he had been incarcerated in Fort Bend County from September 28, 2009, then he was transferred to Harris County and incarcerated from June 7, 2010 to October 19, 2010. Then he was released in September 6, 2012. There is another record for June 7, 2020, and I think there are other times he was incarcerated that I have not been able to get the records. Ultimately, Brianna had no business getting with this man. He was bad news from the get-go. It's unfortunate what happened to her, and my heart goes out to her family. I hope we all learn from this situation. We cannot fix any individual. It's not even our duty to try to fix anyone. If you're in a toxic and abusive relationship, please walk away from that relationship. It's not worth it for your own safety and for the rest of mine or people who love and care about you. With that said, that's it for today's case, guys. Let's live and learn from other people's stories. Let me have your opinions in the comment section about this case, but please remember to be respectful towards the families involved and to each other. Do consider subscribing if you'd like to see more of me and my true crime case coverage. If you have any case you'd like to see me cover, please DM me on my Instagram is Annie_Williams. And until the next video, take care of you and yours.